Hello everybody, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today on behalf of KPMG about this really important initiative, which is the establishment and the development of an IFC in Da Nang and the contribution that's going to make to Da Nang's broader economy and specifically to the financial services sector. Firstly, I wanted to talk a little bit about the importance of this initiative in the context of Vietnam's economic development and all the things that are happening in the world. So we're at a really interesting time in our history where we've come out of a difficult period, both in terms of COVID, but also broader economic challenges that have put real stresses and strains on the political world, not only in Vietnam, but around the world, and on the economic world, and on the financial services sector, where the public's understanding and expectations of those of us that are playing in this space has really changed. It's really important that as we think about our role in the financial services space, that we understand the contribution that we make to broader society and to the economic growth and prosperity of the economy that we're working in, and that it's not just about us and not just about financial services. So IFCs are really important in this context because while they enable a very clear focus from both policymakers and from participants in financial services on the role of the sector, they also need to be aware that the IFC itself is not an end, but it is a means to an end, which is economic growth and prosperity. So I want to talk a little bit about that today as you all think about how the IFC is going to develop in Da Nang and the role that the IFC will play versus the initiative happening in Ho Chi Minh City, but also in the wider and broader society. So the number one point I want to make today is that an international financial centre is a facilitator for finance. It is a conduit for capital, for the raising of money that can help business succeed. It's a way to finance trade flows, particularly exports, but also capital, for example, into infrastructure or to help entrepreneurs realise their goals as well. So when we think about those principles, that helps us understand the need to develop the IFC framework and regulations and priorities, not just through the lens of money, but with a much broader set of criteria in mind. So at KPMG, we've been thinking about this and the sorts of things that we think we need to do together with regulators, with other financial services players, and of course us in the professional services sector to build a successful IFC and to build it in Da Nang. And we think there are really four broad areas that you all ought to be thinking about developing regulations and capacity to make the IFC successful. The first area is around entry regulation. It's around the corporate governance systems, it's around the ability for companies to be easily formed, for investment licenses and so on to be issued, to enable us to establish entities, to enable changes in ownership through mergers and acquisitions or new investors to occur, to enable companies to list, to gain capital, and of course, in what's a really hot area, the fintech space, to enable financial entrepreneurs to easily form entities and raise capital to be successful. So this is going to involve us thinking about the legal regulations, but also the sorts of institutions that we need to be operating in Da Nang to enable companies to form, to raise capital, for that capital to be freely traded, and so on. So that's an important first area. The second area, which is really important for an organisation like mine at KPMG, is around the area of finance and accounting. So Vietnam's been going through a process over many decades now of developing its financial reporting rules and standards in a way that enable investors to invest with confidence and that enable entrepreneurs and business leaders to really clearly understand their obligations to make disclosures about what's happening in their company and to produce financial reports that investors can understand. When we're thinking about an IFC, we have to understand that the people using financial information are new. They're broader stakeholders than we're used to. So we need to start thinking about how we accelerate the adoption of financial reporting standards which go beyond those we're used to using in Vietnam, but reflect international norms and standards as well. So the Ministry of Finance have honed in on IFRS as a priority, and that's something that we wholeheartedly support, and we think that that's an area which is going to be important for the development of the IFC and for anybody playing in it as well. Related to that is the third pillar of development, which is around the tax system and the legal system as well. So the IFC will only work if everybody that's playing in it understands the rules of the game. And the rules in really important areas include the payment of taxation and the fulfilment of legal obligations to the government, but also to each other as well for participants in the IFC. So what we would encourage regulators as they think about the development of the IFC in Da Nang and in Ho Chi Minh City is to think about how the tax system will need to be modified in order to reflect not only what it does now, which is the production of goods and services in the economy, but also the flow of capital within Vietnam and across Vietnam. We need to think about how we tax capital flows. We need to think about how we tax interest, and we need to think about how we tax particularly service providers that are operating in the IFC or with participants in the IFC as well. So Vietnam's made a lot of tax reform over recent years. The IFC, I think, puts another layer of challenge around tax authorities to develop regulations and laws which make sense for a financial system, because Vietnam's system, while it's advanced, probably hasn't had to worry too much about that now. On the legal side, I know you're all going to be talking about the need for dispute resolution, and this is really important. The idea that anybody participating in a financial centre understands the rule of law is available to them, that law is important, understands that they can enforce the contracts that they enter into, and understands that when there are disputes, and there are always disputes, that there are mechanisms in Vietnam, in the IFC, for those disputes to be resolved through the legal system or through dispute resolution procedures. These things are really, really important and an important part of developing the IFC. The fourth area, which is very, very important also, is the development of the human resources sector. So the IFC creates both enormous opportunities but also real challenges to Vietnam as we think about the people that are going to make the IFC operate successfully. It's critical that we have high caliber personnel available to work for IFC participants, whether it's for banks, for professional services players, or for companies that are raising capital, for investors, both within Vietnam and outside Vietnam. It's really critical that the people involved in the process are very, very well educated, that they are highly experienced, and that they understand the important role that the IFC has in the economic development of the country. It's going to be necessary to think about mobility, the ability for international experts to move into Vietnam, into the IFC area. It's quite a challenge actually to meet the necessarily complicated obligations of international employers when you bring expertise in from outside. But we have to acknowledge that in Vietnam, we're still developing the financial services sector, and as the IFC is going to lift the complexity of the amount of work which is done in Vietnam, whether it's on the legal side, banking, professional services and so on, we're going to have to make it easier and more attractive to bring international expertise in as well. And we know that's great for Vietnam and great for Vietnamese, because every expert that comes into the country contributes to the development of the IFC, but also naturally develops the talent around them as well. The IFC is going to provide enormous opportunities for Vietnamese people, young people and mid-career professionals, but also senior and experienced professionals to participate, but they'll only do it or only be able to do it if the IFC is a success at attracting the sort of talent that we need. So this is a holistic challenge for the government, for the universities that are involved in training people, and for players, participants in the financial services sector like KPMG and others that need to develop talent in country, but also bring talent in as well. So those four areas, the regulatory environment, the finance and accounting area, the tax and legal system, and the human resources system are all really critical to the success of the IFC and how it develops. Just in closing, I want to comment a little bit on KPMG's experience, particularly in Da Nang, and establishing a foothold in the financial services sector. So today, this year, we're celebrating 30 years of business in Vietnam and Cambodia, and we've grown really successfully. We have 2,000 people in these countries. We serve many of you in this room as your service providers, whether we're providing audit or tax or advisory, consulting, legal services and so on, and we're really, really proud of our business. 10 years ago, we became the first international professional services firm to establish a foothold in Da Nang, and we opened an office, and we're really, really proud of that decision and of the contribution that we've been able to make to Da Nang and the central regions ever since. If I reflect on that journey, several things have worked really, really well. One has been the availability and the passion of the talent in Da Nang and in the central market. We know that there are really high quality graduates coming out of Da Nang's universities, and there are people from Da Nang that have studied elsewhere that want to work in that beautiful city. And KPMG's opening of an office there has enabled us to help those professionals meet their career goals as well. We've also found that the client base, our clients in Da Nang and in the central regions, have really appreciated us having a footprint in Da Nang, having a place that they can get local service and local advice. And we've found the government in Da Nang and in the neighbouring provinces have been really receptive and encouraging to us for having a presence in the city and maintaining an actual visible foothold for KPMG in those really important provinces. We've found that our presence has enabled the growth of the real economy in Vietnam, whether it's manufacturers building factories, the development of the tourism sector, the building out of infrastructure. KPMG has been able to play a really, really important part in that. But when I think about the next step, the IFC, I think there are two really important elements to bear in mind. One is that we do need to establish not only a KPMG, not only the banks, the international banks and local banks that are present in Da Nang today, but we need to build beyond that to a broader financial services ecosystem. We need to encourage other players into the market as well so that we can deal with each other, we can support each other in bigger projects, and we can really help the IFC to be successful. So it's a broader development of the financial services sector. And secondly, what is clear to me is that while we've had great encouragement and support from the government, there is going to be a need for a deep thinking around how we incentivise participants to enter the financial services sector in Da Nang, because establishing in the centre, establishing new presence, hiring great people, offering great services is a big investment by players in the sector, and the investment is only possible with great support of everybody involved, including the government. And that support should come not only through your participation in great events like this, but also new regulations, and also thinking about how the other inputs to the system, including the attraction of investors and clients, will help us all be successful as well. So thank you so much for listening, ladies and gentlemen. I know you're going to have a great day today. All of us at KPMG are very, very excited about this, and we're very, very confident that what you're working on is important, not only for Da Nang and for the central provinces of Vietnam, but for Vietnam's future growth and prosperity. Thank you very much, everybody.